What could do this season of podcast on this Marlon and then this sound cat supposed to participate in news in the UK. To explore the stories and give it a little opinion. Although the news sites out there for disabled news, several people in news affects our lives is still underreported, and generally, as many of us already know, we're underrepresented in the media. So this podcast is our effort to try and address this point. So, straight into the news. Story 1 from BBC. Tom Grennan has said having therapy has helped him with issues around body dysmorphia, called himself his own biggest wiki. Speaking on You About, former BBC contest with his best friend, broadcaster Ron again, Grennan spoke about how he affected it. I definitely have body dysmorphia, he said. I'm always constantly thinking I'm bigger than I am. I'm always pinching my belly. It's the healthy mindset at all, and I'm fully in it there. Eating patterns and gym training. Habits, he noted, can have a big impact on his mental health. Sometimes wouldn't be training. For the purpose of staying fit, he added. I'd have a binge with 18 and then I'd be like, I need to go and train now to make sure these calories or these foods are growing. Yeah. What happened to me? Just another habit. Things of guilt often follow it. Eating binges, he admitted. For example, one biscuit sets into half about you, he said. You can be left thinking, I'm going to be fat, I'm going to be so unfit. With reference to how he viewed himself and his own body, the little bit of love singer continued, I'm at home in the mirror going to my missus. I'm a fat, I'm just like, are you alright? You're not. He said he'd been scared of going back to an unhealthy lifestyle. I always think I need to stay at this point. The singer from Bedford has previously spoken on the same podcast about how he physically tapped on a night out when he was younger, changed his life and set him inspiring. But that's episode 30-year-old revealed is in a good place with you right now. God in his body is dysmorphia. I mean that therapy, which you find helps to love yourself more. Body dysmorphia. According to the NHS website, body dysmorphia disorder, BDDK, is a mental health condition where a person spends a lot of time worrying about flaws in their appearance. These flaws are often noticeable to others. It affects both men and women of all ages, but is most common in teenagers and young adults. Having BDD does not mean you're vain or self-obsessed, he continues. It can be very upsetting and have a big impact on your life. Symptoms include worrying a lot about specific areas of your body and spending a lot of time comparing your look with other people's, as well as either look at yourself in the mirror a lot or avoid the mirrors entirely. People with body dysmorphia also go to a lot of effort to conceal flaws with curls and makeup or picking their skin. TV and radio presenter Kemp shared some of his own experiences with Conan on the process of body image and about weight in showbiz. He said, can't look at a picture of myself if it's on the day because it will upset me for the rest of the day, the one show host notices. I'll be judging everything. I won't be about how much be doing. I'll be about how I look and how I want to be live that. The former model recalled witnessing one extreme example of such pressures. For one young woman, a fashion show in Milan, we were doing the rehearsal and she fainted on stage, remembered. Tried to give her food, but she needed to eat it, but she was straight up refusing. I saw that on a regular basis. Gemb also recalled the county to have someone inappropriately told him he looked a lot fatter on today. He said, I felt a lot, but that's just because sometimes he'll be working more. Like anyone. Tuesday, Brennan went on to tell BBC Breakfast how he had channeled some hard life lessons, heartbreaking advice from his mum into his new album, Everything I Want. Hit me to where I didn't want to be. I was lost when I was young and I was stupid sometimes. My mum would say something wasn't right and sing it as two previous number ones. She was named. Said, but actually, none of that actually matters. Peace of mind is what matters at the moment. When you've got peace of mind, everything falls into place. You can see your way out of anything. Again, let's pause and for sympathies was that really in the media representation to prominent people, which are people that young people look up to and to see that people aren't on their own and that there's people that are also going to struggle, but also, there's help out there. Obviously, you mentioned camps and some days. Still, the majority of people in this country, or in American countries, it's normalised and it's pick up their life. Well, prevalent. Obviously, the problem in this country seems to be that, there's a dearth of the NHS. It's not a lot less available. It's particularly talking, kind of seen one-to-one talking therapies. It's not available. And as much on the NHS as it once was, CBT seems to be the therapy of choice. But again, there's massive waiting lists for that. There's massive waiting lists for CAMS and adult mental health in general. People happen to go private, particularly with other kind of neurodiversity. Conditions that have mental health crossover, such as autism or ADHD. But again, just an article of representation of mental health issues that I think need more discussion. Taking now with a lot of young people post-pandemic suffering from mental health. So yeah.
Should we go on into the next story? Is a bunch of dead suicide. This bit's a new service. This story comes from, and the headline is Court Inquiry over deaths of parents driven to despair by DWP's child betting service. Campaigners have called for an inquiry into the deaths of parents driven to despair by the refusal of the Department of Work and Pensions to correct errors in child support demands. They believe DWP figures show that the death rates of separated parents who help pay to support a child through DWP's child maintenance service, known as paying parents, are far higher than average. DWP has resisted releasing detailed information on how many paying parents are dying every year and how many are taking their own lives. But an examination of this bit new service of some of the information that's been released to campaigners in the last 5 years suggests that DWP has questions to answer. DNS was first approached about the concerns earlier this year by Ian Briggs, whose son Gavin took his own life 5 years ago. The coroner at his inquest refused to investigate his father's complaints that the actions of the CMS has contributed to the Cameron's decision to take his own life, even though the agency had wrongly claimed he owed $16,000 in support payments after claiming his income was $75,000, rather than the $26,000 it was in reality. Ian Briggs and fellow campaigners at research and campaigning group Stop Suicide UK to focus on the harm caused by CMS, many paid parents are dying due to CMS's actions. Briggs said he believed CMS had played a huge part, in his son's decision to take his own life by sending him computer-generated letters that failed to reflect that he was paying his child maintenance regularly and getting his case catastrophically wrong. He said he believed this was happening to thousands of paying parents. So TMS, knowing that this organisation ran my son to his death, there's nothing I could do about it. It's going to be frustrating that all the people are being put through the same emotional nightmare time because of the CMS IT system. I'll keep campaigning to expose the CMS IT system failures and its catastrophic effects, as I made a promise to Gavin at his graveside. I would fight for justice. This data is available to DNS, do not prove anything conclusively, but they do suggest the need for detailed investigation of the concerns and statistics. Although it is impossible to draw clear conclusions, they appear to show the death rates are 2 or even 3 times higher for paying parents in the general population. Diggs said the increased death rates of paying parents can be explained by CMS automated processes, unjustified demand for arrears, and systematic maladministration, which is said to have contributed to significant mental health stress and many suicides. And he said that, just as with why did DWP issues, communists rarely pick up on these links during the inquest into suicides. This is our first claim relative to the first concerns by CMS in January 2023 during the final session of an inquiry into CMS, the Commons Work and Pensions Committee Abel and Debbie Abrams told of a paying parent whose arrears had been inaccurately assessed, and the frustration that he found ultimately led him to take his life. She said his mother had previously written to the DWP expressing real concerns about mental health, but there had been no reply. She stated this at the first time at the panel before Christmas. They also provided data about the suicides of paying parents who were inaccurately assessed in terms of the arrears that they owed. This is tens of thousands of pounds that they said they are, even literally pounds for them to start. She had a touring working pensions minister. This came younger if DWP collected data on suicides of paying parents. He told her, "Could I just say that being new into the department, I'm already aware, having seen some of the correspondence I have to look at and sign off on some absolutely tragic cases. It's absolutely appalling these cases can lead to people taking their own lives." Andrew Sugden, director of CMS, then confirmed their service did not track data from suicides of paying parents, although when it was made aware of the suicide, it could be analysed through DWP's secret internal process review, RPR system. The committee's subsequent report, published in April 2023, found that much of the evidence described severe hardship and distress experienced by paying parents. One paying parent had told the committee that he had been diagnosed with severe depression and severe anxiety last year as a result of the long-term torturous CMS. So, just summarise. Obviously, there's no, as the article states, there's no clue ceiling, but similar to other areas of DWP, i.e., working age benefits, where this have led to benefits being stopped and people unfortunately taking their own lives. I think this is another area that seems in its investigation. If the numbers are showing some kind of link, then the least they could do is investigate, because obviously these people's lives and also that's parent, as a child, multiple children that grown up now, and their parent figure in their lives as well. So from a human perspective, there's multiple reasons why this needs to be looked into, as well as it's administrative, because again, this is another potential IT scandal. We've only seen in the last few years the advising system, the post office scandal, how that ruined so many lives to postmasters, and how this was denied for so many decades. And then we're seeing some form of justice, and even then some of those people, unfortunately, are long dead and will never see better justice. And in this case, we're seeing potentially a similar thing. So it's in the public interest for this to be explored further, because general automated systems, standards, betting systems are efficient and cost effective, but IT isn't foolproof. We've seen many times IT systems fail, and if it's systematic that these are being miscalculated, then it's a flaw in the system that needs to be addressed, because ultimately you want a fair system, and you want a system that provides accurately for ultimately there's children involved, and you want a system that provides fair information for those children's needs. And if you're requesting payments that are inaccurate, and the payee simply can't afford any of those payments, creating a system where they end up being penalised, and then the end goal, which is that they provide financial support for their child, isn't being met anyway because their margin kind of etc. and so forth. And obviously, it's leading to even more drastic consequences, such as potentially the loss of life. So it's really needs to be something that's looked into and investigated thoroughly and objectively, and hopefully stop one of these situations where we'll be waiting years down the line for inquiry, where there's more loss of life and more trauma sections and weight development and how at least stage BP um um look into these concerns, because the voices will only grow louder, and history shows us if they were a sort of scandal, and did benefit scandals of previous, not just for working age disabled people. So if you've got the carers allowance scandal, that's it's still repercussions of that. How long are these kind of efforts going to be go on challenging and notice? You really need to put root and branch investigation for all these systems, all these protocols, so that you get a fair system that's ultimately meets the aims, which is providing financial subsistence to those in need. Story comes to the BBC, and the headline is "Disabled Woman 6 months ago, wheelchair battery ways." A paraplegic woman who has been waiting 6 months for a wheelchair batteries to be replaced said she is unable to travel more than a mile from home. Rachel Carter said her powered wheelchair is her access to independence, and she's been waiting for new batteries since she showed up in January. Guntrend City Councillor Duncan Walker said Miss Carter's experience was an absolute disgrace, and said he was shocked that someone with her condition was left with 40 batteries for so long. Staffordshire Stoke-on-Trent Integrated Care Board, ICE, acknowledged Miss Carter's concerns and said it would look into her case. Stoke City Council carried out a review into its wheelchair service provider, AGM Healthcare, last year. The review was commissioned by the ICB following concerns raised that service users were facing mentally delays. They provided by the ICB to the scrutiny committees this week said the service has been able to reduce the number of long-term waits over the past year. In June, there were 61 adults and 15 children waiting more than 52 weeks compared to 182 adults, 47 children in 2024. Ms. Carter, a member of the wheelchair users representative group, told the committee that the feedback from service users was still mostly negative. She said, "When I picked up the chair in January, unfortunately, the battery was flat. It broke down twice on the way home, and I had to be rescued once by somebody after I'd only gone a mile up the road. They checked the chair and said they'd all done the same batteries. However, I still only have a range of 2 miles, which means I'm completely grounded up in a quarter mile from my house. It's not safe to go any further than that. Battery one hot discharge." She told the committee that she was informed the wait time would be a month, but every time she called to trace up batteries, there'd be no update. So many people are giving the standard response they won't take long, and invariably just goes on and on and on. For personally, per pleasure, this is my access to independence, and it's been completely curtailed because I can't go anywhere. You're far more in this situation. The wheelchair user representative group is compiling reports on user experience with the service. ICB officials plan to use the report to inform the procurement process for a new wheelchair service provider with the current contract due to end next March. Committee members expressed disappointment that the service had not improved as much as they had wanted. Councillor Chandra Ganagant from Stoke-on-Trent Council said there was a clear mismatch between the ICB's reports and the experience of service users. Committee members asked for ICB to return in December to give further updates on the service. This is another story of really poor customer service for disabled people, but I think it's problem is it's a nationwide. Well, it's a nationwide problem because I think there's an issue in terms of wheelchair services for healthcare, whereby it's an old stock, but isn't the funding to renew that stock. I know, courtesy from friends in the past who've used power chairs and they've had to fundraise to afford new chairs. They can no longer rely on the chairs that are provided to the NHS simply because these similar issues tend to happen. And when they do break down, wait for repair times, often in excess of a week, 2 weeks, etc., and so forth, which, I think it's an issue that's needs addressing there. But again, it's one of those things with all the other issues that the NHS have, it's probably not one of their main policies. Saying it shouldn't be, but unfortunately, it's the massive issues in the NHS, and simply one of them. I don't know what the do know what the solution is. It's investment in that side of things, and you better equipment, but that's something that's it's going to take a lot of funding. That's probably the argue isn't available. There may also be an issue with the amount of engineers who are able to come out at any one point in time in any kind of local authority area to go and repair the amount of chairs. There are issues in local communities that might be another thing as well. So I think procurement's one thing, but funding to provide high quality licensed equipment is another thing as well. It's a side ups in lips, people having to fundraise, GoFundMe's to buy a new chairs themselves, or even second hand chairs, because they're not cheap. We're talking in excess of thousands for fairly modern chairs. And the same goes for manual chairs as well. There's a lot of the subways out there is very old and needs a refresh. That in some cases for other lesser kind of expensive independent living equipment that's still fairly expensive for the average person to purchase, but not in the same grand scheme as, for instance, a chair or a hoist. Some local authorities simply say that individuals have to pay for those things themselves, so there'll be assessed for them, but there just isn't the funding within the NHS or such services to provide that equipment often. So there's a real issue in terms of independent living and gadgets and chairs, hoists, etc., and so forth. And again, some of the issues are always there isn't school of thinking that I remember when I worked in the community that the narrative was that, well, that's what then DLA now BIP is there for. It's there to provide towards paying towards this kind of extra living costs, but there's extra living costs, and there's paying for thousands of pounds worth of equipment for several people that, as we know, very often have done the pipeline. It's our major overall of thinking and how it's going to be funded, how it's going to be paid for. Especially, for instance, for those who are in care in their own community care, they're having to pay increased in the past 14 years, every increase in charges towards that care, which is where the BIP is going, and then you've got to pay for equipment on top of that, and rates of benefit payments and kept up with inflation, etc., and so forth. So it's a bind. And it's on the last episode to talk about the lack of accessible housing. So it's the housing that's accessible. You need equipment to go along with that accessibility to make it truly accessible, which adds an extra cost, and it's just the costs never end for disabled people, unfortunately. The most issues is something that unfortunately looks as if it's going to be funded by extent or for partners anytime soon with this NHS, social services, etc., and so forth. And that story comes from this Britain news service. And the headline is a letter to Minister issues 10 basic demands on rail accessibility. Accessible transport campaigners have called on the government to sign up to 10 basic equality standards that would improve the accessibility of rail network for millions of disabled passengers. They say their 10-point plan will restore accessibility to the heart of government's planned rail reforms. In their letter, Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander then accused the government of scrapping commitments on accessibility made by the last Conservative government. On the companion organisations, they've signed a letter on the Association of British Consumers, which did Disability Rights UK, Disabled People Against Goods, Inclusion under the Transport for Law, as well as allies such as British Rail, National Pensioners Convention, and the TSSA Transport Union. They particularly highlight their concern that the Labour government removes statutory accessibility and social and economic duties from its plans for rail reform. They tell Alexander in the letter, the removal of these duties unders years of campaigning by disabled people and ignores evidence of systemic discrimination across the network. They say that demand should now be considered the minimum expectations for rail reform, but they will also ensure the maximum value for public money. Among the demands are for government to restore the accessibility due to its new railways bill, a new national investment fund to pay for accessible improvements, with deadlines for step-free access and level boarding, and legal right to turn up and go and travel at every location, and a single national accessible travel policy. That also calls for new complaints body. Disabled passengers for the Disabled Persons Transport Advisory Committee to be made a statutory advisor to the new future railways, as the previous government has planned, and for the government to improve its consultation with disabled people. It calls for new powers for the Office of Rail and Road Regulator and enforce quality standards, full staffing of the rail network, and a new, more generous complaints and compensation system for transport discrimination. Emily Sullivan, ABC's co-founder, said this there's an urgent intervention to demand a full legal framework for accessibility and warned the government that we will strongly oppose any attempt to pass railways bills without these basic equality standards. Disabled people have the backing of passenger groups, railway workers, and allies across the transport sector. Among those who've signed the letter are Sarah Ledbetter and Doug Pauly. Two claimants in a high-profile legal case taken in 2023 against a consultation on plan to close hundreds of ticket offices. Ledbetter said, "I'm shocked and disgusted that we have ignored after years of campaigning to achieve this commitment. It's already wrong to exclude disabled people from the common plan or only make standards a step further. We have the right to travel by train without this. Many blind and visually impaired people would be isolated and excluded." All he said, stripping accessibility duties from the Great British Railways legislation represents a fundamental retreat from legal obligations to disabled passengers. Accessibility framework provides a solution to ensure Britain's rail network serves everyone, not just non-disabled people. Without these protections embedded in primary legislation, will perpetuate the two-tier transport system that systematically excludes disabled people. Tony Jennings, co-founder of the Campaign for Level Boarding, added, "The government needs a plan, systematic change and then accountability to remove barriers to serve equal access. Inclusive design might just be the hard decision-making process with a timescale to achieve joint accessibility improvements on production with MLP." DFT spokesperson said in statement, according to its core priority for Great British Railways, GPR, we are committed to delivering a rail system which allows disabled people to travel easily, communicating with dignity. All accessibility groups were considering all options to ensure accessibility is at the heart of GPR, such as the creation of powerful new passenger portal, which will services for disabled passengers. HCC will publish a roadmap setting out our approach to delivering a more accessible railway from relative to GPR. Well, only hope that's the case. Many people won't be holding their breath. As I've said many times in previous episodes, 30 years on from the DDA, is still missing. Particularly with the railways, with really bad access. The fact that you can't board and go in 2025 is absolutely ridiculous, but they have to as a pants. And then even when you do book, for many people require sports counter trains, there's no one there. And you wouldn't think about the amount of local stations to get offices closed, etc. and so forth. Well, understand. All closed altogether, there's no staff after a certain time. Could have to 5, 6 o'clock. Really means that, a lot of people end up anticipating it, so people end up being stranded if they need to get to those particular stations. Something needs to change, need to modernised. Our service and considering prices for everybody just keep clearing up, whether it's trains and buses, but particularly trains, they're extortionate. I mean, prior to Brexit, their airfare prices being as cheap as they were pre-Brexit. It's cheaper for some people, I think it's cheaper for people to be like abroad than it was to, go from one end of the country to the next. It's ridiculous. And then for disabled people, it's able more of a, job because accessibility is so poor. So it can only help that these recommendations are taken on board and, they once they listen to disabled people's demands. Anyway, that's all for this episode. Thanks for listening.